Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Mathis with the Mathis Group. We are a premier ATP, and today we're going to be talking about in our 7 minutes to PMP mastery. We're going to look at the exam content that talks about managing and controlling changes in project settings. Those of you who have taken other courses with us and stuff, you'll probably notice that this is going to be a little different because all of this information has been updated with the most recent material that PMI has. And so you'll need to listen very closely as we talk about it because some of the things that we used to talk about in the past are a little bit different as you prepare for the test today. So let's give you a definition of change request. So a change request is a formal proposal to modify some part of the project, deliverable, plan, baseline, requirement, process, contract, or project document. A change request may involve corrective action, and we see this a lot of times in situations. It could also involve preventative action, defect repair, scope change, schedule change, cost change, requirement change, product feature change, or documentation update. So a lot of different pieces can come into these change requests. So let's give you a little overview about this because we're going to talk about it not only from a plan driven or predictive side, but we're going to talk about from an agile side as well. So managing and controlling changes means guiding a project through change in a disciplined, transparent, and value focused way. It's not about filling out a change request form. It's about making sure that changes are identified clearly, evaluated for impact, routed through the correct approval process, communicated to the right stakeholders, implemented only when approved, and then documented in the correct project artifacts. So it's important for us to understand what these processes are and how they would be different from one to the other. So a project manager should not treat changes as automatically bad. Sometimes people will talk about it like that. So PMI expects project managers to recognize that change may create value. And so that's the big buzzword today on the test is value. Everything has to create value. And change requests can do that as well. However, PMI also expects the project manager to prevent uncontrolled change, also called scope creep or unauthorized work on your test. In addition, change should be welcomed when it adds value, but must be controlled so the project does not lose alignment with objectives, outcomes, governance, and stakeholder expectations. So why this topic matters on the test. The PMP exam places more emphasis on real world environments now, business outcomes, value delivery, adaptive decision making, and PMI also notes that the updated exam continues to cover predictive, agile, and hybrid approaches. That means change control questions will likely test whether the candidate can make a good judgment call in certain situations. And obviously, the situation of a plan driven is going to be totally different than agile. So PMI also asks, what should the project manager do first when a stakeholder requests a change? When should a change request be submitted? Who should approve a change? How should the project manager handle a change in agile or in hybrid environments? What should be updated after a change is approved? How should the status of a proposed change be communicated? How should the project manager prevent unauthorized work? And so they're going to put you in a variety of situations and see whether or not you can come up with the right answer, the best answer for that circumstance. Proposed changes. So a proposed change has been requested but has not been approved. That's a real sticking point for you because a lot of times we will read a proposed change as an approved change. It's not on your test. And so do not implement a proposed change until it has gone through the proper process. And so that means it's going to be approved if it goes through that process. But just because it's a proposed change does not mean that it is an approved change. So make sure you know that. In addition, when we look at approved change, an approved change has been reviewed, accepted by the correct authority. Once approved, the project manager should make sure the change is communicated, scheduled, implemented, tracked, verified, documented, all the things that a project manager should be doing at that time. So the change control process defines how changes are submitted, reviewed, approved, rejected, deferred, communicated, and documented. The change control board, or CCB, is what you'll see on your test as well, is a group of authorized people to review, decide on change requests. The CCB may approve, reject, defer, or request more information, and not every project has a formal CCB, especially in agile environments. However, every project should have a clear decision authority. So when you start seeing CCB, a general rule of thumb would be to look at that and anticipate you're looking at a plan-driven project because CCB is a change control board. On the Agile side, it's really much more loose with that. You've got a customer who's embedded with you who can say yes or no to the change. The baseline is a part of this. So a baseline is the approved version of the scope, schedule, or cost. It is if a requested change affects an approved baseline, formal change control is usually required. And so you're usually going to see that from the aspect of plan driven. And so if the change affects an approved baseline, contract, release commitment, compliance requirement, major project objective, follow the formal change control process, and that's going to tell you that you're in a formal project. Change in plan-driven projects. So in predictive projects, change control is usually formal because the project often has approved baselines. In a predictive setting, the project manager should usually document the change request, analyze the impact on scope, schedule, cost, quality, risk, resources, procurement, and stakeholders, submit the change request to the CCB or approved authority, communicate the decision, implement only if it's approved, and update the project management plan and project documents. An exam cue for you that will help you is if the project has a baseline and someone asks to change it, do not implement the change immediately. Most of the time we miss a question because somebody requests something and we jump all over it to do it quickly, and that's not typically the right answer because you've got some analysis that you're needing to do before you ever make a change on any of these. Change and change driven. So in Agile projects, change is expected. However, Agile does not mean uncontrolled change. So in Agile, changes are often managed through product backlog, the product owner prioritization, backlog refinement, sprint or iteration planning, reviews and feedback loops, definition of done, team capacity discussions. So if a stakeholder requests a new feature, the project manager, scrum master, or servant leader should usually help the stakeholder work with the product owner. The product owner can evaluate the request, compare it with the backlog items, and prioritize it based on value. And then an exam clue for you here. Change typically do not stop at current iteration, but are placed in the product backlog by the product owner. So you don't typically stop a 3-week iteration to put a change request in. That's not typical on the test, and that's not typical in Agile the way PMI thinks. Typically, when you start an iteration, it's locked in, it's time boxed, so no changes to it until that time box is over, and then you make changes and adjustments for the next iteration. So keep that mindset for your test. Also, a change in a hybrid project. Hybrid is especially important for the PMP exam because PMI emphasizes predictive, agile, and hybrid situations, hybrid approaches. So our hybrid project may use predictive governance for budget, contracts, compliance, and milestones, and might use agile delivery for product features or software increments. In hybrid settings, the project manager must ask which part of the project does this change affect. If a change affects an agile product feature, it may go into the backlog. If the change affects an approved budget, schedule, contract release, commitment, regulatory requirement, or baseline, it may require formal change control. So an exam clue for this is the best hybrid answer balances backlog flexibility with formal governance. So because hybrid can be anything, it can be more predictive, and the next hybrid could be more agile, you have to read your test question real carefully to see which is this. If it's more predictive, then maybe you do need a change control board. If it's more agile, then maybe you are talking to the product owner and putting it into the product backlog. So managing and controlling changes. There's some common mistakes and exam traps. So let's walk through some of these real quick. So the first one is thinking urgent means approved. So they'll present to you something in the test question that's urgent, and you'll think that means approved. It's not approved. That's a trap. So a senior stakeholder says the change must be done immediately. That means nothing until it gets approved. And so your best PMP logic is clarify the request, assess impact, follow the correct change control process, but don't put it into play unless it's going to be approved or has been approved. Number 2 would be thinking high value means skipping the controls. High value targets or high value initiatives does not remove the controls that are put into that project. And so the answer says to implement the change because it improves business value. That's a good thing. But the best PMP logic is value matters, but the project manager must still manage and control the change just like he or she does in anything else. Number 3, treating Agile as no change control. So the exam trap trap for this is the answer says the Agile team should immediately accept the stakeholder's new request. And so you'll see something like that. The logic on the PMP test that you need to keep is the request should be reviewed, refined, prioritized through the backlog unless it requires urgent action. Number 4, updating documents too early. So the exam trap is the answer says to update the scope baseline as soon as the change is requested, but the best PMP logic for this is do not update the baseline until the change is approved. That's a real tricky point on the test. It's not approved, they're going to catch you on that. And number 5, forgetting to communicate the proposed change status. The exam trap is the project manager submits the change request but does not inform stakeholders of the decision or the status. The best PMP logic for this would be stakeholders need transparency on whether the change is under review, approved, rejected, deferred, or requires more information. So let's look at our PMP style question for you. So a hybrid project is delivering a new customer portal. The project has a fixed launch date and an approved budget due to a regulatory deadline. The software team works in 2-week iterations. Halfway through the current iteration, a senior business stakeholder asks the team to add a dashboard feature for an upcoming executive presentation. The product owner agrees that the feature has value, but adding it now may cause the team to miss the iteration goal and could affect the approved release scope. The stakeholder says the change is urgent and asks the project manager to just make it happen. So here's your question, here's your answers. A, direct the team to add the dashboard feature immediately because the product owner agrees that it has business value. Tell the stakeholder that no new feature can be added because the release scope and budget have already been approved. C, escalate the request to the sponsor and ask for approval to have the team work overtime so the feature can be completed without changing the launch date. Almost always when you look at escalation, you're probably not going to want to escalate very often on the test. And D, work with the product owner and team to assess the impact, place the feature into the backlog for prioritization, and follow the formal change control process if the approved release, scope, budget, or launch commitment is affected. So pick your answer and then we're going to talk about it. All right, so your correct answer was actually D. It's a hybrid project, so the feature request belongs in the Agile product backlog for refinement and prioritization. However, because the change may affect approved release scope, budget, or fixed regulatory launch date, formal change control may also be required. This answer is best because it recognizes business value, it involves the product owner, it protects the team's current iteration goal, it assesses the impact before the action, it uses backlog prioritization, it uses formal change control if governance commitments are affected and avoids unauthorized work, and it supports transparency and documentation. And so you've got a lot of answers here that have some right things in it, but this is the most right. This is your best answer. So let's talk about these others. So A, direct the team to add the dashboard feature immediately because the product owner agrees that it has business value. This is wrong because business value does not eliminate the need for impact analysis. You still have to do an analysis on it. It might bring value, but you want to look and see how much value it's going to bring. So the product owner's support matters, but the project manager still must consider iteration goal, release, a scope, budget compliance, and launch commitment. So this answer allows for an uncontrollable change. What about B? Tell the stakeholders that no new features can be added because the release scope and budget have already been approved. This is usually wrong because it's wrong the other way. We're not allowing anything to happen. And then C, escalate the request to the sponsor and ask for approval to have the team work overtime. Escalating something to the sponsor is taking some of that responsibility off of you. And so that's typically not the best answer for you. Now, as we come to the end of this video, let me just encourage you that if you're working on your PMP exam, trying to get ready for your PMP exam, and you know others that are doing this, pass this video along to other people because all of this is free. This is the most current information that's out. We're an ATP with PMI, and so this is current information. So don't hesitate to invite some of your friends and some of your other people that are working on their PMP to these videos. Now, as I come to a close, I do PMP boot camps every other month virtually, so you can tap into this from anywhere in the world. We have a phenomenal first-time passing rate, and we have a guarantee that nobody in the world will touch. And so we'd love to have you in a group and have you sign up for something. I'd love to see you in one of our classes. So thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you have a wonderful week, okay? Bye now. Take care.